Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about silence, and what happens when silence stops meaning weakness. Let's dive in. "You seriously married that?" one of them said. Not quietly. Not even in a whisper. They all laughed. Another voice, hers this time, "I know. I mean, he's nice, but he still wears shirts from clearance racks and thinks buying 2-for-1 shampoo is smart budgeting. I swear, if he wasn't mine already, I'd assume he was someone's tax deduction." More laughter. Ice clinking. The hum of music from the patio bar in the background. I was supposed to be out of town. That's what she thought. But my meeting in Chicago got cancelled last minute, and instead of texting her, I thought, hey, maybe I'll surprise her. Bring flowers, sit in on one of her girls' nights, prove I'm not just some spreadsheet-loving bore with zero social skills. What I got instead was a front row seat to a roast session starring me. And she was the headliner. She called me broke. Said I was aimless. Told them I didn't really do anything anymore, and that I probably Googled how to look busy during the day. Mind you, this was coming from a woman who once cried because her electric toothbrush stopped syncing with her phone app. I didn't go outside. I didn't confront her. I just stood behind the half-closed terrace door, holding a bouquet of sunflowers like the world's saddest mime. The flowers ended up in a trash bin on 3rd Street. I went home. Sat in my car for an hour. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel sorry for myself, I felt awake. Because what Marjorie didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't broke. I wasn't wandering. I had spent the past 8 months building something quietly. No social media posts. No humble brags. Just long hours, hard lessons, and more ramen than any adult should admit to eating. And earlier that very week, I had done something I never imagined I'd do. I signed the lease for a real office. In a real building. On the 36th floor, with real clients who knew my name, and not because I married someone loud and pretty. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't even plan anything at all. Until the next morning. She walked into the kitchen in her silk robe, still half laughing about last night's gossip. I was calm. Too calm. "You want to grab lunch downtown today?" I asked. She blinked. "Like, with you?" I smiled. "Yeah. Thought I'd show you the new place I've been working from." She looked suspicious. "What new place?" "You'll see." She agreed, thinking maybe it'd be a sandwich shop or some dusty co-working lounge. She wore heels. She had no idea where we were going. And I had no intention of telling her. Until we stepped into the elevator and hit the button for floor 36. She checked her reflection in the mirrored elevator wall for the 3rd time. Adjusted her lipstick. Smoothed her blouse. Not once did she look at me. That was Marjorie. Always preparing for an audience, never thinking the person beside her might be worth her attention. As the elevator rose, she finally glanced my way and asked, "What kind of office is this again?" I shrugged. "Just a small consultancy. Renewable systems, mostly. Still getting off the ground." She snorted. "So you're consulting now?" "Ha. Didn't know anyone was hiring hobbyists." That stung. But I didn't show it. The elevator chimed. Floor 36. When the doors slid open, I stepped out first. She hesitated. Her heels clicked softly as she followed. The space was sleek, sunlit, and far more polished than she expected, glass walls, modern artwork, the quiet hum of productivity in the air. 2 receptionists greeted me with polite smiles. One of them stood. "Mr. Landry, good to see you. Conference room's ready." I nodded. "Thanks, Allison." I felt her stop walking. She looked around, then back at me. This is, your office? Yep. I thought you said small. Well, I said, it started small. It grew. There was a flicker in her eyes. Confusion, then calculation. But, when did you start this? 8 months ago. And you never told me? You never asked. She opened her mouth, but I kept walking. Past the frosted glass doors, past the server room, past the espresso bar she would have mocked if it weren't so impressive. We entered the main conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over half the city. She stepped in slowly, like she'd wandered into the wrong movie set. Then the door opened behind us. Ellie, a voice called. I turned. It was Marcus Hanley, CEO of Orion Grid Solutions. A man whose name graced the cover of Forbes 2 years ago. A man she'd bragged about seeing at a tech conference once, like he was royalty. He walked straight in and grinned like we were old friends. You didn't tell me you'd be bringing someone today. Spur of the moment, I said. He extended a hand to Marjorie. You must be Elwood's wife. I've heard plenty, all good, I promise. She looked like someone had poured ice water down her spine. Oh, she stammered. You know him? Marcus laughed. Know him? This guy helped us land our first multi-region rollout. Without his systems model, we'd still be stuck in beta. I smiled, politely. We've been working together for a while. Marjorie didn't respond. She just stood there, blinking, mouth slightly parted. Marcus excused himself and left us alone. The room was silent again, except for the sound of her breathing, shallow and uncertain. You embarrassed me, I finally said. Last night. I heard everything. Her face dropped. No, I continued, you don't have to explain. I don't need an apology. I just needed you to see. See what? She asked, her voice tight. That I was never the burden. You just stopped paying attention. She didn't say anything for a long time. And I realized something in that silence. This wasn't just about respect. It wasn't even about money. It was about the fact that somewhere along the way, she had started seeing me as a passenger in her life, not a partner. And now, standing in a space I had built, in front of people who actually valued my work, she didn't know how to process it. I wasn't supposed to have this. I was supposed to be her quiet, dependent husband, the safe choice. But now that I wasn't so safe, she looked scared. And I wasn't sure if that made me feel satisfied, or just profoundly sad. I didn't rush her. I just stood by the window and watched the traffic below, tiny lives moving at full speed, unaware that one floor up, my marriage was quietly unraveling in designer heels and stunned silence. Marjorie finally sat down at the table, her posture stiff, arms crossed like a child who just got caught cheating on a test. She wouldn't meet my eyes. So, what, you just decided to keep this all secret, she said, but there was no bite behind her words. Only confusion. And something close to fear. I didn't keep it secret. I just stopped trying to convince you I was worth listening to. The look on her face then, it was like I'd punched her. Not physically. Just, emotionally. Deep in a place she didn't think I could reach anymore. She always had the upper hand. Her words. Her image. Her carefully curated world of better than. But now. She looked like a stranger in a room she didn't know how to stand inside. I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a folder. Set it down on the table in front of her. What's this? She asked. Clients. Projections. Press draft. The firm's being profiled in Modern Energy Monthly next quarter. She opened the folder slowly, like it might explode. She saw the articles. The signed contracts. The letters of intent. My name, not hers, at the top of every page. I didn't want this to be about ego, I said quietly. I wanted to build something real. Something solid. You used to admire that about me. She didn't say anything. Just flipped another page. You humiliated me last night, Marjorie. Not just because you mocked me. But because you did it with the same confidence you used to defend me with. That's what broke me. Finally, she looked up. And her eyes weren't angry. They were panicked. Elwood, I didn't mean it. I was joking. I didn't think you'd actually be standing behind the glass door. She winced. I thought you were in Chicago. I was supposed to be. But the flight got cancelled. So I came to see you. I thought, maybe we'd reconnect. We stood there in silence again, the kind of silence that fills your ears like static. The kind you can't unhear once it started. You lied to me, she whispered. I tilted my head. You lied to yourself. About who I am. About what I'm capable of. I just stopped trying to correct you. She stood up suddenly, pushing the chair back with a sharp squeak. Why are you showing me this? You want to embarrass me? Punish me? No, I said. I just want you to see the room I built without your applause. And then, as if fate couldn't resist twisting the knife, the door opened again. All set for the 2:30, said a woman in a sharp suit. Her name was Carla, my new operations manager. She didn't glance at Marjorie. She handed me the presentation clicker and smiled. We've got the investors in the other room. Thanks, I said, then turned to my wife. You can stay. Or you can leave. But either way, I have to go to work. Marjorie looked like she didn't know which option would hurt less. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched me walk out of the room, not in anger, not in arrogance. But in the quiet, unshakable stride of a man who no longer needed to ask his wife's permission to feel like he mattered. I didn't see her leave the building. I was already presenting to the investors by the time she would have walked out. My hands were steady, my voice was calm, but part of me kept wondering whether she stayed to watch from the hallway, hidden behind tinted glass. She didn't. By the time I stepped out of the conference room, she was gone. No text. No voicemail. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji. It should have made me feel lighter, like I had finally peeled off the weight of her shadow. But it didn't. Instead, I walked back into my office, shut the door, and just sat there, staring at the skyline. All that glass and steel, all that success, and still, something ached. I guess part of me had hoped she'd stay. The next 2 days passed in silence. No fights. No shouting matches. Just silence, the kind that wraps around you at night when you're brushing your teeth alone and pretending not to notice the empty space behind you in the mirror. On the 3rd day, she finally broke it. I came home late, exhausted after a client dinner. She was waiting in the living room, wearing that soft beige sweater she only pulled out when she wanted to look emotionally disarmed. Hey, she said quietly. Hi, I replied, setting my keys down. Can we talk? I nodded, though I wasn't sure what there was left to say. She gestured toward the couch like this was a mediation session and not a slow-motion train wreck. I sat down, arms folded. She didn't waste time. I was shocked, she said. I didn't know any of it. The office. The people. What you've built. You blindsided me. I didn't blindside you, I said. You stopped looking. Her lip twitched like she was holding something back, pride, maybe. Or guilt. Or both. I wasn't trying to hurt you that night, she murmured. It was just stupid talk. Wine and jokes. I didn't think. No, you didn't think, I cut in, and it came out sharper than I intended. You didn't think I was worth defending. You didn't think I might hear you. You didn't think I was anything more than a background character in your little social performance. She looked down, then reached for something on the coffee table, a manila folder. I hadn't seen it before. I went to the office today, she said. I blinked. What? While you were out. I asked your receptionist for some of your documents. Said I wanted to understand what you'd built. I thought it was just something you lucked into. She opened the folder and flipped through the pages. But you didn't luck into anything. You worked for this. Every inch of it. I stayed quiet. I wasn't about to thank her for finally seeing me. She kept flipping pages, then stopped at one. A photo. It was taken during a company workshop last month, me, standing at a whiteboard, smiling, mid-sentence, surrounded by a dozen people who were actually listening to what I had to say. I haven't seen you smile like this in years, she whispered. I didn't respond. She looked up. Her eyes were glassy. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't someone I could tell anymore. That one hit. She flinched like I'd struck her. She stood slowly, hands shaking just enough for me to notice. She walked toward me, like she wanted to close the distance, but stopped a foot away. I don't know if we can fix this, she said, voice breaking. But I want to try. I met her eyes, and for the first time in months, I didn't see the woman I had married. I saw someone who realized too late that the thing she took for granted had learned how to live without her. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure I wanted to fix it anymore. The morning after our conversation, I woke up before sunrise, like I had every day since starting the company. Old habit. I made coffee quietly, letting the bitter scent fill the kitchen, grounding me before another long day of meetings, numbers, decisions. I didn't expect her to come downstairs, not that early. But she did. She sat at the table in silence, wearing the same sweater from last night. She hadn't slept, I could tell. Her mascara, faint as it was, left tired shadows beneath her eyes. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't looking at it. She was just staring at me. I want to take some time off work, she said. I looked up, caught off guard. Why? To be around more. To work on us. There it was. The redemption arc. The narrative twist she'd decided to insert, like this was all just a rough patch in a love story. But I didn't feel like the main character in her version, I felt like a chapter she was trying to edit after skimming the middle. You don't need to fix this with a sabbatical, I said. You need to figure out if you ever really saw me at all. She shook her head, lips tight. Don't say that. You're acting like this was all on me. Wasn't it? That made her stand up. She gripped the counter with both hands like she needed something to hold on to. You hid things from me, Elwood. You didn't tell me about the business. You let me believe we were broke, that you were drifting. That's not honesty. That's control. I stared at her, stunned. I didn't let you believe anything. You never asked. You assumed. And you mocked me. You chose your pride over partnership. She bit her lip. Her voice dropped. Do you still love me? That was the question, wasn't it? I didn't answer. Not then. Instead, I walked past her, grabbed my bag, and left for the office without saying a word. That day was chaos, in a good way. Our second major client came through. We closed a $740,000 contract, the kind of deal that meant we could finally hire full-time engineers instead of relying on freelancers. I should have been ecstatic. But my mind was still at that kitchen table. Her silence. My silence. The entire gap between us that no amount of paperwork could fill. That evening, I found out something I wasn't supposed to know. It started with an email from my bank, flagged for verification. I'd authorized new joint access to a secondary account just 2 months prior. Marjorie had access to it, but we never really used it. I opened it, assuming it was a standard fraud check. Instead, I saw 2 hotel charges in her name. 2 different nights. 2 different cities. Both during weekends I was away at conferences. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to be that guy, paranoid, digging through statements, inventing betrayals to justify his own bitterness. But there it was. The address of the second hotel seemed familiar. I searched it online, just to be sure. And then I saw it. Her coworker, Damon, the one who laughed hardest that night on the patio, had posted a photo on Instagram months ago. A rooftop lounge. Same hotel. Same date. Same city. And there, in the background, blurred but unmistakable, Marjorie. Sitting beside him. Smiling. A different smile. Not the cold, polite one she used at home. Not the tense, regretful one from our recent talks. This smile had warmth. Ease. It wasn't for me. I stared at that image for nearly 20 minutes, hands shaking, heart caught in my throat. Not because I didn't expect it, but because I had. Somewhere deep down, I knew. I just didn't want it confirmed. But now. Now it was real. I shut off my phone. Closed the laptop. And for the first time since I'd started the company, I walked out of the office early, not because I was tired, not because I was sad, but because I realized something devastating. No matter how far I'd climbed. She had already decided I wasn't worth waiting at the bottom for. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Not after what I saw. I drove for hours, no destination, no playlist, just the low hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional flicker of headlights in the opposite lane. Somewhere around midnight, I parked in front of an old gas station, sat in the car with the engine running, and stared into nothing. I wasn't even angry. That was the part that scared me. I should have been furious. Shouting. Throwing something. Anything. But there was only this cold, numb silence inside me, like I had nothing left to burn. The next morning, I walked into the office early, too early. The lights were still off. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and ambition. I sat in the conference room, staring at my reflection in the window, until the city turned from gray to gold. Around 10 a.m., I got a text from Marjorie. It said, "Can we talk before this gets worse?" I didn't reply. She showed up anyway. An hour later, I saw her through the glass walls of reception, dressed carefully, but not dramatically. No jewelry, no heels, just a gray sweater and flats. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her own choices was beginning to compress her. She stood in the hallway for a full minute before stepping into my office. "Did you see it?" she asked without preamble. I didn't look up. "Yes." "Then you know it's not what it looks like." I let out a short breath, not quite a laugh. "I think we both know exactly what it looked like." She took a few steps forward. "It wasn't a full-blown affair. It wasn't like that." "What was it like, then?" I asked, finally looking her in the eyes. "Was it emotional? Physical? Or just convenient?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I stood up slowly and walked to the door. Closed it. Locked it. Not to trap her, but to keep the outside world from turning this moment into something performative. I turned to face her. "Tell me why. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't hide behind guilt. I need to hear it. I deserve to hear it." Her hands trembled at her sides. She tried to hold eye contact, but her voice cracked as soon as she spoke. "Because I thought you stopped trying," she whispered. "You were always tired. Always distracted. I felt invisible. I felt like I was living with a ghost who couldn't tell me what he wanted. Damon was just someone who noticed me. That's all." "That's not all," I said, sharper now. That's a choice. You don't just trip into someone else's hotel room. You don't just wake up one day and lie to your husband while he's trying to build something for both of you. I didn't mean to let it go that far, she said quickly, a note of panic in her voice. It was a mistake, Elwood. One I hate myself for. No, I said firmly. You don't hate yourself. You hate being caught. You hate that I didn't stay the clueless husband you could roll your eyes at with your friends. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. I listened to you mock me. I watched you dismiss me. And still, I invited you to my world, hoping you'd see the man behind the quiet. But instead of pride, you felt threatened. And now? You're only sorry because you realized I wasn't the backup plan. I was the entire plan. That silenced her. For a long time, she just stood there, the weight of truth finally pressing down on her spine. Then, softly, do you want me to leave? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the desk, picked up an envelope I had prepared the night before, one I hoped I wouldn't need. Inside was a printed statement of our shared accounts, a copy of the business contract removing her name from any stake she once casually claimed, and a separation proposal written in clear, clinical language. I handed it to her. Her hands didn't reach for it right away. Elwood, she said, voice trembling, please don't do this. We can go to therapy. I'll quit my job. We can start over. I stared at her. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel smaller in her presence. I already started over, I said quietly. You just weren't part of that version. She took the envelope. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. She opened the door, turned back like she wanted to say something, then thought better of it. And left. This time, I didn't follow. I sat back down, the silence now a kind of peace instead of punishment. And somewhere deep in my chest, I realized something surprising. I hadn't lost her. I'd finally let go. For a week, the silence was pure. Not peaceful, exactly, just pure. There were no calls. No texts. No mysterious appearances in the lobby. Just absence. Her absence. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I could finally hear myself think without her voice occupying every corner of my mind. I slept better. Ate slower. Even caught myself humming while reviewing client reports. It was strange, this clarity, this lightness. Like the emotional tension that used to choke me at home had simply vanished. I assumed it was over. I thought we'd finally reached the moment where both people silently agree to walk away before they start bleeding out. But then, exactly 8 days after she left my office with that envelope in hand, I got a call. Not from Marjorie. From a lawyer. His tone was polite. Too polite. The kind of tone that feels like it's already holding something sharp behind its back. He was calling on behalf of my wife, still legally my wife, I realized, though emotionally that thread had already snapped. She's asked that we formally request a review of the firm's assets, equity structure, and all related financials that may involve shared marital property, he said. I stood in my office, staring at the line graph on my whiteboard, quarterly revenue surging, while trying to process what I had just heard. She's claiming stake in the company? I asked. She's exercising her right to request evaluation of any joint interest, given the marriage timeline and lack of formal separation at the time of business formation. My blood ran cold. She wasn't coming back for me. She was coming for what I built. I ended the call, calmly. Politely. Then sat in my chair and just froze. For 10 minutes. Maybe 20. I don't remember. Time felt like it folded in on itself. I had created something from scraps, from silence, from weekends buried in code and coffee and fear, and now the woman who laughed behind my back was coming through the front door holding paperwork. It wasn't even about money. It was about control. Power. reclaiming the narrative she no longer had access to. If she couldn't be the star of my story anymore, she was going to at least try to own the rights to it. That night, I didn't go home. I drove to my brother's place, a one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore he managed. We hadn't talked much in the last few years. Not because of a falling out, just life. He opened the door in his usual hoodie, looked at me for half a second, then said, "Guest room's clean. Beer's cold. You don't have to say a word." And I didn't. Not at first. But 2 beers and a long silence later, I finally spoke. "She's trying to claim part of the company," I muttered. He didn't react the way I thought he would. No curse words. No rage. He just shook his head. "She never saw you." "Not really," he said. "And now she wants a piece of something she never believed in." I stared at the ceiling. I want to hate her. But mostly I hate that I still care what she thinks. He leaned back. "You don't. You just haven't forgiven yourself yet for loving someone who didn't deserve it." That line stuck with me. All the next day, through calls and meetings, I heard his words echoing in my head like a warning I hadn't known I needed. I called my attorney. I gave him everything, the records, the dates, the financial trail showing every cent of the business was started post-layoff, with funds I had earned solo, with no marital crossover. We had proof. We had dates. And we had intent. Marjorie would walk away with nothing from the company. But that didn't stop her from trying. Because 2 days later, she showed up again, this time not in heels, not in tears. This time with her lawyer at her side. And a proposal that would flip everything I thought I knew about her on its head. They walked into my office like they owned it. Marjorie in a navy blazer I'd never seen before, hair tied back like she meant business. Her lawyer, stiff and overconfident, held a leather folio like it contained a map to my future. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said. No hug. No smile. Just tone. Neutral. Measured. Practiced. I gestured for them to sit. My own attorney was beside me, calm as ever. We'd prepared for this. I thought I was ready. But what came next? I hadn't predicted. Marjorie cleared her throat. "After reviewing everything, I realize I misunderstood what this company was and how it was built. I spoke from emotion. I acted from pain. And I was wrong." I blinked. She wasn't looking at me. She was reading, every word rehearsed, probably written by her lawyer, but her voice trembled in just the right places. She continued, "I'm withdrawing any claim to Elwood's business or assets. I'm not here to fight. I just want closure. And if possible, peace." For a moment, I didn't believe her. I waited for the twist. The demand. The guilt trip. But it didn't come. Her lawyer handed us a document. Clean. Straightforward. She was telling the truth. They left after that. No dramatic goodbye. Just a nod from her and the soft click of the door closing behind them. I sat there in stunned silence. For the first time since this all began, I wasn't holding my breath. She had finally let go. And so had I. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my office, coffee in hand, sunlight breaking over the skyline. The company was thriving. We'd hired 5 more people, landed our biggest client yet, and I'd even been invited to speak at a tech summit, something the old me would have laughed at in disbelief. But it wasn't just business that changed. I changed. I stopped seeing myself through her eyes, or anyone's. I took up hiking. I started painting again. I stopped hiding in the background of my own life. And as for Marjorie, we're not friends. We're not enemies. Just 2 people who once thought they'd build something together, only to realize they were never using the same blueprint. I wish her peace. I mean that. Because peace, I've learned, is priceless. And I found mine, not by winning, not by proving anything, but by walking away with my dignity and my dream intact. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible, like you had to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's world, stop. Start building your own. It's slower. It's harder. But it's yours. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. Now it's your turn. What moment in your life made you realize you were stronger than you thought? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for more real stories, told from the heart. We're just getting started.